The gun looked even bigger in the rain. Marcus Hale could feel the barrel aimed right at his chest, even though it was pointed past him, digging into the side of his little girl's neck. Lightning flashed over the rooftop parking lot, turning the hospital's concrete walls bone white for a split second. Lily's pink tennis shoes slid on the wet pavement as the man yanked her closer, using her small body as a shield. "Give me the drive or she goes over," the man shouted over the storm, chin jerking toward the low wall that dropped 7 stories to the street. Behind Marcus, soaked to the skin and shaking, the young woman in the navy blazer clutched her briefcase like it was life support. Her mascara had run in black tracks down her cheeks. She wasn't a patient. She wasn't family. She was the reason they were up here. "She's 8, Marcus said quietly, his voice steady in a way his hands were not. "You really willing to kill an 8-year-old for a spreadsheet?" Thunder rolled so hard it rattled the rooftop lights. Somewhere below, sirens wailed closer, echoing up the concrete canyon. Marcus's shirt clung to his back, rain and sweat mixing together. He could feel his heartbeat hammering in his throat, but his eyes never left the gunman's face. He saw it then, the tiny tremor in the man's left hand, the sweat beading on his upper lip despite the cold wind, the way he winced and pressed his other palm against his chest between breaths. Marcus had seen that look 1,000 times just before someone dropped. "You're not going to make it 5 more minutes if you keep this up," Marcus said softer now. "That pain in your chest. That's not the weather." For the first time, doubt flickered in the man's eyes. "Before I go any further, tell me where you're listening from tonight and hit that like and subscribe button if you believe courage still matters in this world." Marcus Hale hadn't planned on being anyone's hero again. Most nights he was just the guy in gray coveralls pushing a squeaky cart down the fluorescent hallways of Gateway Mercy Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri. He fixed leaky faucets, unclogged toilets, and listened to the low hum of machines that never slept. At 37, his face looked older than it should have, the lines around his eyes carved by long shifts and longer memories. During the day, he lived for the sound of one voice, Lily's. Their 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in South City always smelled faintly like detergent and grilled cheese. Crayon drawings covered the fridge stick figure. Superheroes' crooked houses with big suns, one lopsided picture of a man in uniform that Lily insisted was him, even though he hadn't worn army medic fatigues in years. He didn't talk about Afghanistan much. Not to his brothers from the unit. Definitely not to Lily. How do you explain to an 8-year-old what it feels like to cradle your best friend in the sand as the life drains out of him, your hands slick with blood, your trauma kit empty? How do you explain that you can save strangers under fire, but somehow weren't there when your own wife's car got hit by a drunk driver on a rain-slicked interstate? The night the state trooper came to the door, Marcus's world shrank to the size of his daughter's hand curled around his thumb. So he traded combat boots for steel-toed work shoes, triage tents for boiler rooms, and adrenaline for routine. He took the night shift because it paid slightly more, and because it meant he could walk Lily to school himself, pack her lunch, and be waiting at the front door when the final bell rang. His life became a rhythm fix, mop, replace, repeat. Keep his head down. Keep Lily safe. Never ever be late when it mattered. He believed in 3 things: now showing up telling the truth, and never walking away from someone who needed help, even if helping meant nothing more than jiggling a stuck vending machine so a tired nurse could get her snack. On a Tuesday in November, the cold kind where the wind off the Mississippi cut right through your jacket, Marcus was up on level 3 of the parking garage at 11:47 p.m., wrestling with a flickering overhead light. The city glowed orange in the distance, the arch a pale silver hook against the sky. Down below, traffic hissed on wet pavement. He was thinking about whether he had enough in his wallet to let Lily get pizza on Friday when the stairwell door slammed open hard enough to make him jump. A woman stumbled out, almost falling to her knees. Her dark hair was half out of a bun hospital badge twisted on its lanyard. Her scrubs were splattered with something dark that looked like blood, but Marcus could tell in a single glance it wasn't hers. Her eyes were wide, wild, scanning the shadowed edges of the garage. "Hey, are you?" he started. "Don't call security," she gasped, backing away from him as if he were the threat. "Please, they're not on your side." Somewhere below them, deep in the garage, a car door slammed. Another. The echo of footsteps on concrete started to rise slow and purposeful, like hunters who already knew exactly where their prey had gone. That was the moment Marcus's quiet, carefully controlled life began to crack. The footsteps kept climbing. Slow, heavy, growing clearer with each echo. The woman in scrubs. Emily, according to the badge, twisted sideways on her chest, pressed herself against the cold concrete wall, breathing like she'd sprinted miles. Marcus didn't know her, hadn't seen her before tonight, but whatever she'd run from had shaken her to the bone. "Come on," he whispered, guiding her behind his tool cart. "Stay low." She obeyed, but her hands trembled so hard she clutched the edge of the cart just to steady herself. The fluorescent lights above them flickered again, plunging the garage into a heartbeat of darkness before buzzing back to life. Emily flinched. The sound of boots on concrete grew louder, closer, deliberate. Then a voice echoed up the stairwell. "She came this way. Check every level." Marcus felt his gut tighten. Whoever was after her wasn't panicked. They sounded coordinated, confident, like men who were used to chasing things that didn't often get away. A flash of movement at the far end of the garage caught his eye, two silhouettes stepping into the open. One lifted a phone, its screen lighting his face from below. Marcus didn't recognize him, but he recognized the look in his eyes. Determined, cold, focused. Emily saw them too. Her breath hitched. Marcus held up a hand. "Wait." She looked like she wanted to bolt, but her knees buckled when she tried. "Not that way," he murmured. "They'll see you." "How do you know?" she whispered back. Marcus didn't answer. He just listened. It was a skill he'd picked up overseas, knowing where danger was by the way air moved, by the shift in footsteps, by the change in someone's breathing. His hands might have been busy fixing broken pipes these days, but his instincts had never retired. With the men sweeping the far end of the garage, Marcus led Emily quietly toward a narrow maintenance hallway. It wasn't much of a hideout, just a dead end with a fuse box and mop sink, but it was out of sight. He closed the door gently behind them. In the dim glow of the emergency bulb, Emily leaned back against the wall, eyes filling. "I didn't know where else to go," she said in a rasp. "I thought if I stayed inside the hospital they'd, I don't know, hesitate. But they..." She stopped, trying to steady her breathing. Marcus knelt by his open tool bag, pulling out a small towel and handing it to her. "You don't have to explain everything right this second," he said, "but you need to tell me enough to keep you alive." "Can you do that?" Emily swallowed hard. She nodded. Before she could speak, the footsteps moved closer again, shadows passing under the door. She froze. Marcus put a finger to his lips. Two voices murmured just outside. "You see her run up here?" "Boss said she grabbed something she wasn't supposed to. We find her, we get it back. What if she already handed it off, then we take it from whoever she gave it to?" A pause. "You think that janitor saw her?" Emily's eyes widened in terror. "He better hope he didn't." The other voice replied. "Boss doesn't like loose ends." Emily gripped Marcus's sleeve. His jaw clenched. He leaned just close enough for her to hear. "They won't touch you," he whispered. "I'll get you out." The steps moved on, fading into the open space. The second they were gone, Emily sank down onto an overturned bucket, burying her face in her hands. "I shouldn't have dragged you into this," she said. "I'm so sorry." Marcus leaned against the opposite wall. "You didn't drag me anywhere. You ran for help. That's what people do." She looked up at him, eyes shining in the dim light. "Most people look the other way." He didn't have an answer for that. They waited until the voices drifted deeper into the garage. When Marcus cracked the door open again, only the hum of fluorescent lights greeted them. "Come on," he said. "There's another exit on this level. Stairwell opens into the northeast wing. Fewer cameras." "How do you know that?" Marcus hesitated a beat. Then he told the truth. "I've worked every inch of this place. Nights get long. You learn shortcuts." Emily managed the faintest hint of a nod, pushing herself off the bucket. They slipped through the door and moved quickly across the concrete. Emily stayed close to Marcus, her posture shrinking every time a sound echoed. She wasn't just scared, she was devastated, wrung out like someone whose whole life had been flipped upside down in a matter of hours. When they reached the stairwell door, Marcus eased it open a few inches. The coast looked clear. He gestured for her to follow, but the elevator dinged behind them. Marcus turned just in time to see a figure step out, the same man whose phone had lit his face in the garage. His lips twisted into a satisfied smile. "There you are." Emily went rigid. "You shouldn't have run," the man said, stepping forward. "Makes this messy." Marcus put himself between them. "Listen," he said, "she's terrified. You don't need to make this worse." The man's smile faded. "Move." Marcus didn't. "You hearing me? Move." A tense silence settled. Emily clung to the stairwell door behind him, and for the first time, Marcus saw the depth of her fear. Not the frantic kind, but the kind built on betrayal. The kind that came from being hunted by someone who used to stand on the same side of the hallway as you. Then the man took another step. "Last chance." Marcus stepped forward too. "I'm not going anywhere." A flicker of annoyance crossed the man's face. He wasn't used to pushback from hospital maintenance workers. Marcus saw the arrogance in his posture, the surety that people like him were beneath notice. "Have it your way?" the man muttered, reaching into his coat. Marcus's stomach dropped. A small object flashed out from inside the coat. Not a gun, but a stun device. Emily screamed as Marcus lunged. The man swung the device, cracking against Marcus's shoulder. A jolt shot down his arm like lightning. Marcus staggered, shoulder-numb fingers twitching. The man raised the stun device again, but Emily slammed the stairwell door into him. Hard. He stumbled back. Marcus recovered just enough to grab the man's wrist, wrench it downward, and send the device skittering across the concrete. The man snarled, swinging wildly. Marcus deflected the blow and shoved him backward. He hit the wall with a grunt. "Run!" Marcus shouted. Emily didn't hesitate. They sprinted down the stairwell. Emily nearly slipped on the landing, but Marcus caught her arm and kept moving. They burst onto the third floor's empty hallway, alarms beeping faintly from distant patient rooms. "Where are we going?" Emily gasped. "My daughter," Marcus said, breath tight. "She's waiting for me at home. I need to get to her before they realize they can use her to get to me." Emily stopped cold. "They won't know who you are." "They know what I look like," Marcus said. "And those men outside heard enough to guess we crossed paths." Emily's hand flew to her mouth. "Marcus, if they even try to." "They won't," he said firmly. "But I'm not taking chances." They made it to the employee exit and slipped into the night. The rain had eased to a mist, the streetlights reflecting off puddles as cars hissed by. Marcus kept his head down, guiding Emily along the sidewalk toward the bus stop. But a patrol car sat at the corner, and 2 officers leaned against it. Not hospital security. Real police. Emily stiffened. "I can't, Marcus. I can't talk to them. You don't understand. One of the men chasing me. His brother is a detective. If I end up in a squad car, I disappear." Marcus studied the officers. Their uniforms were clean, their posture relaxed. They looked like normal beat cops, not anyone hunting a woman in the shadows. But fear had its own logic. And Emily's was rooted in something deeper than panic. Her hands shook as she tugged her hood lower. "Please, don't let them take me." He heard the rawness in her voice, the desperation, the same tone he'd heard from soldiers who knew the wrong rescue meant the wrong hands getting hold of them. "Okay," he said quietly. "We keep moving." They walked past the officers, Marcus trying to shield her with his body. One of them glanced over, eyebrow raised at Marcus's soaked shirt and bruised shoulder. "You all right, sir?" the officer asked. Marcus forced a small nod. "Yeah, rough shift." The officer hesitated, scanning Marcus as if something didn't quite fit. "Hospital trouble." Marcus's chest tightened. Emily's hands clenched around her sleeves. "Just a maintenance issue," Marcus said. "All handled." Something in his tone must have worked. The officer nodded and turned away. When they reached the corner, Emily exhaled, her knees buckling again. Marcus steadied her. "You're shaking," he murmured. "I haven't stopped since this afternoon," she whispered. "And it keeps getting worse." Marcus scanned the street. He didn't see the man from the garage, but the threat hadn't gone away. It had only stepped into the shadows, waiting. Then Emily said something that made his whole body go cold. "They think I have something that can ruin them, and if they can't find me..." She swallowed. "They'll take the person closest to me. Or the person closest to you. Whoever gets them leverage." Marcus froze. Lily. His mind raced. He pictured her sleeping under her blanket-stuffed giraffe under one arm window cracked open because she liked to hear the hum of the city. He pictured her waiting for him on the couch, coloring book open, telling him about her day at school. His pulse pounded so hard it hurt. "They won't touch my daughter," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried a finality that made Emily's breath catch. "Okay," she whispered. "Then we don't go home." He looked at her, astonished. "You said they know your face," she said. "They know you helped me. If you walk through your front door now, they'll be waiting." He hated that she might be right. He hated even more that Lily was alone. He pulled out his phone. His fingers shook as he dialed his neighbor, Mrs. Polk, a retired teacher who lived across the hall. She picked up on the second ring. "Marcus. Everything. All right? Could you check on Lily for me?" he said, trying to steady his voice. "Make sure she stays inside. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone." Mrs. Polk heard the tension. "Of course. I'm going now. Please don't tell her I'm in trouble." "I won't," she said softly. "Just come home safe, dear." He hung up and stood perfectly still for a moment, forcing air into his lungs. Emily watched him with wide, guilt-stricken eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said. "This is my fault." "No," Marcus said, meeting her gaze. "You didn't do this. The people hunting you did. And we're going to end this." "How?" she asked. Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked down the street toward the dark stretch of industrial buildings along the river, toward the place that held the one person in St. Louis who might be able to tell them what they were up against. "We start," he said slowly, "by finding out what you took. Emily hesitated, and then she unzipped her jacket, revealing a small, battered flash drive on a lanyard under her scrubs. Its red casing was cracked, one corner melted like it had been near a flame. Marcus stared at it. "You're telling me," he said, "this is what got you chased through the hospital?" Emily nodded. "This drive contained something they'd kill for." She closed her fist around it. "And if they don't find it soon, they'll stop being subtle." A gust of wind swept down the street, slapping the loose edges of their clothes and carrying the distant pulse of sirens through the night. Marcus knew then that whatever came next would push him to the edge of everything he'd spent years trying to rebuild. He glanced once more toward the neighborhood where Lily slept, and the pressure inside him coiled so tight it felt like a wire about to snap. The breaking point was coming, and it was coming fast. Rain carried the city's neon in ripples across the pavement as Marcus and Emily moved through the industrial riverfront. Midnight was coming. The streets were mostly empty, just the low hum of freight ships and the occasional rumble of a train echoing off the old brick warehouses. Emily held the cracked flash drive tight enough to turn her knuckles white. "They'll find us," she whispered. "They always do." "Let them try," Marcus said. But the truth twisted in his gut. He kept checking the shadows, every alleyway, every roofline. The danger didn't feel distant anymore. It felt close. Too close. And every second that ticked by his mind flicked back to Lily. Her laughter. Her drawings on the fridge. Her tiny arms around his neck when she said goodnight. If anything happened to her, no. He wouldn't let his mind finish the sentence. They reached an old red brick machine shop, long abandoned except for a single light in the window of a workshop near the back. A metal sign hung crooked over the door, "Edward Jenkins, Machinist." "You trust this guy?" Emily asked. "He's the closest thing I've got to someone who understands trouble," Marcus said. "He served with me, saved my skin more than once." Emily nodded, though fear still clouded her expression. Marcus knocked twice in a rhythm only people from his old unit knew. The door opened a few inches, and a weathered face peeked through the crack. Marcus Ed Jenkins blinked behind square-framed glasses. "What the hell are you doing here at this hour?" "Need help?" Marcus said softly. "It's bad." Ed unlocked the chain and swung the door open. "Get in." The workshop was cluttered floodlights hanging from the rafters, old machine parts strewn across tables, a radio playing low blues near the back. Emily stepped inside, cautiously holding the flash drive like something radioactive. Ed closed the door behind them, studying her. "She the trouble, I'm right here," Emily said. Ed didn't apologize. "All right, let's see what's got half the damn city crawling after you." Emily hesitated before handing him the flash drive. "Be careful," she murmured. "If they find out anyone else has seen this." Ed snorted. "Sweetheart, I've been shot at more times than your friends out there have opened a spreadsheet." He plugged the drive into an old laptop. The screen flickered, then loaded. Marcus saw Emily's breath catch when the first folder opened. Financial records. Photos. Voicemails. Emails. Names he didn't recognize, but Ed clearly did. His face tightened. "Jesus," Ed muttered. "These people aren't playing games." "What is it?" Marcus asked. "Money laundering. Kickbacks to city officials. Payoffs to cops. This ain't just hospital politics. This is a whole network, and if she interrupts the wrong pipeline..." Ed looked up at Emily. "They'll erase you. No trial. No story." Emily swallowed hard. "I didn't go looking for any of this. I just found a file labeled Audit Transfer on a shared drive. When I clicked it, everything was right there. They didn't even bother hiding it. They didn't think anyone would check." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. They're willing to kill for this. Oh, more than kill, Ed said. They'll burn everything around you too just to make sure their trail stays clean. Emily's voice cracked. Then what do we do? Before Marcus could answer, headlights swept across the workshop windows. 3 beams, then 4. A 5th angled in from the other side. Ed froze. They found you. Marcus moved to the window, peering out through a sliver in the blinds. Black SUVs. Men stepping out. Dark coats. No hesitation. They're surrounding the building, Marcus said. Emily covered her mouth. Ed locked the laptop and pocketed the flash drive. We need to move. Back door leads to the train yard. You can lose them between the freight crates. His words died as a metal bang shook the side of the building. Then another. Then crash. One of the windows exploded inward as a heavy boot shattered the glass. They're breaching, Marcus shouted. Emily, move. She scrambled toward the back hallway. Ed pulled open a metal toolbox and tossed Marcus a pry bar. Use it if you have to. Marcus didn't want to. He would. The first man climbed in through the broken window, white scar across his temple, weapon drawn. Marcus didn't think. He moved. Years of muscle memory surged awake, every drill, every takedown, every instinct honed in heat and sand and gunfire. He slammed the pry bar upward, knocking the gunman's wrist hard enough to send the pistol clattering. The man cursed and swung, but Marcus ducked under it and drove his shoulder into the man's ribs. They hit the concrete, hard. Another man entered through the side door. Ed grabbed a wrench off the table and swung it like a bat. It smashed into the second man's forearm, dropping him to a knee. Go, Ed yelled at Marcus. Get her out. Marcus didn't move toward the hallway. He moved toward the fallen gun. He scooped it up and fired a warning shot into the ceiling. The workshop filled with echoes, metallic, deafening. And for a breath, everything froze. Then chaos surged again. Emily screamed from the back hallway. Marcus spun, heart-hammering. 3 more men flooded through the rear door, bigger, faster, advancing on her with brutal confidence. Marcus sprinted. Emily down, she dropped, just as Marcus barreled into the first man, ramming him into a shelf that toppled over with a crash of metal tools. The second swung his baton. Marcus blocked with his forearm, pain shooting up to his elbow. He countered with a blow to the man's knee, sending him down. The third was already reaching for Emily. Marcus saw Lily instead, small, helpless, the world too big around her. The memory of that night with the state trooper flashed, the knock, the silence, the sentence that broke him. He roared, a sound ripped from somewhere deeper than strength. Marcus grabbed the third man's collar and slammed him against the wall. The gun in Marcus's hand pressed into the man's jaw. You're not touching her, Marcus growled. The man froze. Behind him, Emily crawled backward, shaking, tears streaking her face. But the danger wasn't over. Outside, the SUVs repositioned. Doors opened. More footsteps. More men. Ed appeared panting, bruised, wiping a streak of blood from his forehead. We can't hold them here, Marcus. They've got numbers and toys we don't. Marcus nodded. We're leaving, now. Emily scrambled to her feet. They'll follow us. Only if they know which way we go, Marcus said. He pointed at the freight yard outside the back door. Metal crates stretched for blocks, stacked like a maze. We split up, Marcus said. No, Emily protested. They'll grab me instantly. Marcus shook his head. They won't be looking for one person. They'll be looking for 2. If you and Ed take the south path, I'll draw them north. Ed frowned. Marcus, they won't just chase you. They'll shoot you. Marcus looked down at the gun in his hand. I'll make it convincing. Emily's voice cracked. "Why would you risk—" "Because they threatened my daughter," Marcus said quietly. "And now they've come after someone who trusted me." "That's enough." Emily's breath trembled. "I don't want you dying because of this." "I'm not dying tonight," Marcus said. "I'm buying time." He handed the gun to Ed. "Get her to someone who can help. Not cops. Someone clean. Someone outside their reach." Ed nodded. "I know one." They pressed toward the back exit. Marcus paused and looked at Emily. Her eyes were red-haunted, terrified. "Marcus," she whispered. "Please don't. Please come back." "I've got a kid who needs me," he said. "I'll always come back." Then he stepped outside first. The air hit him cold. The yard lights cast long shadows across the metal containers. He walked out into the open with his hands raised high, letting himself be seen. Shouts erupted immediately. "There! North side, move, move." Marcus bolted into the maze of crates. Boots thundered after him. Flashlights seized the darkness. He vaulted over a low barrier, slipping on wet metal, catching himself at the last second. A beam of light cut across his shoulder. Another shot cracked behind him, punching sparks off a crate. He didn't stop. He ducked between rows, climbed onto a ladder, bolted to a shipping container, and scrambled onto the roof. His breath puffed into white clouds. His chest burned. But he kept going. Another spotlight swung toward him. There. On top. 4 men swarmed below. Marcus jumped off the opposite side, hitting the ground hard enough to rattle his teeth. He forced himself up, limping, racing deeper into the labyrinth. Every second they chased him was a second Emily and Ed gained. Every foot he ran was one more foot between these men and his daughter. He could almost hear Lily's laugh in the back of his mind, the way she said "Daddy, look" whenever she finished a drawing. That sound kept him upright, kept him moving, kept him alive. The chase pushed toward the river crates, thinning out the roar of water growing louder. Marcus skidded around a corner and saw the pier dead ahead. A dead end. "Cut him off," someone shouted. 3 men closed in from one side, 2 more from the other. Marcus breathed once, deep and calm. A breath like he used to take before running into buildings that were half-collapsed, flames licking the rafters. He didn't have weapons, didn't have backup. But he had one advantage. He wasn't running anymore. He grabbed a loose chain hanging from a crane and yanked it across the walkway. The metal lattice fell like a giant swinging door, slamming into the men rushing from the right. They hit the ground in a heap, shouting. Marcus turned to the ones on the left. They hesitated a fraction too long. Marcus charged. He tackled the first hard enough to knock him off his feet. The second swung his baton. Marcus caught the man's wrist twisted and sent the weapon clattering. A third man grabbed Marcus from behind, but Marcus slammed backward into a crate, breaking the man's grip with a gasp. They fought in the rain, and shadows breathing hard fists cracking against ribs and jaws and metal. One man drew a knife. Marcus knocked it away. Another reached for a gun. Marcus kicked his knee sideways. A flashlight smashed. A crate door swung open. Shouts erupted from behind. Then silence. The last man stumbled backward, hands raised. From the pier's edge behind Marcus, police sirens tore through the night. Real police, not the crooked ones. Floodlights hit the scene. Officers poured in shouting commands. The men chasing Marcus dropped to their knees immediately. Marcus turned, breath-ragged sweat and rain streaking down his face. 2 officers rushed toward him. One of them froze mid-step. "Marcus Hale," the officer said. "Is that really you?" Marcus blinked. "Tom, officer." Tom Keller, an old friend from high school, ran the rest of the way and grabbed Marcus by the shoulders. "Holy hell, man. Dispatch said there was a chase down here, but Marcus, what did you do?" Marcus glanced at the men on the ground. He didn't answer. Because that wasn't the most important question. What matters, Marcus said, is who I just saved. Tom studied him, confusion turning to awe. Then he looked at the men on the ground, then back at Marcus. You always did know how to run toward the danger, Tom said quietly. Marcus exhaled. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt something deeper. A shift. A line crossed. He had stepped into the fire again, not because it was his job, but because someone needed him. And the world had seen it. For a long moment, all Marcus could hear was the roar of his own breathing and the distant churn of the river. The freight yard lights cut harsh stripes across the concrete as officers spread out, securing the men he'd taken down. Radios crackled. Commands echoed. Someone cursed under their breath while cuffing one of the attackers. Tom Keller kept his hands on Marcus's shoulders like he wasn't sure Marcus was real, like he'd stumbled upon a ghost he thought he'd buried years ago. Let's get you checked out, Tom said, voice low but trembling. You're bleeding, man. Marcus looked down. His shirt sleeve was torn, streaked with someone else's blood, and a little of his own. His knuckles were shredded fingerprints pressed into the bruised sheet of his skin. He felt like he'd been dropped into a cement mixer, but the pain was muted by adrenaline still pounding in his veins. I'm fine, Marcus said. Where's Emily? Tom blinked. Emily. Who? The yard gate clanged open again. More officers hurried in. A white, unmarked sedan pulled up behind them, doors flying open. Out stepped a woman in a dark coat with a federal badge clipped to the lapel. She scanned the scene with sharp, assessing eyes until her gaze locked on Marcus. You must be Hale, she said, approaching briskly. You've caused half the precinct to lose their minds tonight. He didn't like the way she said it, half impressed, half interrogating. Tom shot her a warning look. Agent Price, go easy. He just took on 5 armed men, which is exactly why I need to hear his side before anything else. Marcus didn't answer her. He stepped past Tom, moving toward the open truck bay where EMTs had set up a quick triage table. A knot tightened in his chest as he scanned the shadows for Emily. Before he could call out, she appeared. Ed was with her, one arm around her shoulders as she leaned on him, shaking, but breathing. Her hair clung to her cheeks. She looked exhausted, drained, stunned, but alive. When she saw Marcus, she stopped walking. He didn't know what he expected: gratitude, relief, fear, but what he saw instead was disbelief. Like she wasn't fully convinced he was standing there. You came back, she whispered. Marcus nodded. Told you I would. Ed cracked a grin. Damn fool nearly got himself killed doing it too. A few officers overheard. Their eyes moved between Marcus and the men on the ground, a new understanding dawning, slow but inevitable. Agent Price approached Emily. Ma'am, I'm Agent Jillian Price with the FBI's Organized Crimes Division. We've been tracking a corruption ring operating in this city for 3 years. I need to know exactly what's on that flash drive. Emily held the drive close instinctively, pulling it against her chest. I'll talk, she said. But only if Marcus stays. Agent Price raised an eyebrow. Why him? Because he's the only reason I'm still breathing. Tom let out a soft whistle. Even Price looked thrown off for a moment, but she nodded. All right, both of you. Emily took a few shaky steps toward the triage area. Marcus moved with her close enough to catch her if her knees buckled again. He didn't touch her, but the space between them felt held steady. Before they reached the EMTs, a cluster of officers, 3 men in uniform Marcus recognized from the hospital's neighborhood patrol, approached hesitantly. Mr. Hale, one of them said. We didn't realize you were... He trailed off, searching for words. Another officer stepped in. A younger guy with red hair. We heard the dispatch earlier. They said a suspect was on the run in the freight yard. We thought we were coming to arrest some kind of, dangerous criminal. But you..." He swallowed. "You took down half a squad of men with no backup, no weapons, no fear." Marcus didn't know what to do with their stares, their awe. He dragged a hand across his face. "I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because someone needed help." That the red-headed officer murmured is why it matters. Another officer cleared his throat. "We look Marcus, some of us. We used to see you around the hospital and think you were just another maintenance guy. Didn't know you had that kind of training. Or that kind of..." He gestured helplessly. Whatever that was. Marcus's jaw tightened. "I wasn't hiding anything." "No," the officer said, "we just weren't seeing." The words hit harder than he expected. He turned back to Emily. "Let's get you checked." But before they reached the EMT table, Agent Price spoke again. "Hale, I need to ask you something first." He stopped. "When you moved in this city," she said carefully, "did you notify anyone at the VA or local agencies about your service history?" Marcus frowned. "No. Why would I?" Price held up a tablet screen illuminated with a record Marcus hadn't seen in years. His name, his old unit, his commendations, training certifications, emergency field command roles. Emily's breath caught beside him. Tom muttered, "Here we go." Price wasn't accusatory, more like she was connecting dots she'd never known existed. "You weren't just a medic," she said slowly. "You were advanced combat rescue. Level 3 triage specialist. Embedded crisis responder." Marcus looked away. "Used to be. Past tense." She stepped closer. "What happened overseas, your team, what you survived? That wasn't something normal soldiers walk away from." Marcus didn't answer. He felt Emily's eyes on him, searching, fragile. Price lowered her voice. "Hale, a man doesn't move through a freight yard under fire like that, unless he's done it before." Silence stretched. Then Emily spoke, barely audible. "That's why you knew what to do." Marcus didn't turn, but his hands clenched into fists. Tom stepped forward, shielding Marcus slightly. "Agent, with all due respect, now's not the moment." But Marcus raised a hand. "It's fine." Slowly he met Emily's gaze. "There's a reason I work nights," he said, voice raw. "A reason I stay quiet. A reason I don't tell stories or go out with the guys from the maintenance crew. After my unit, after what happened, I didn't want to be anything but a dad." Emily stepped closer. "You're still that. But you're more than that, too." Marcus shook his head. "Not to most people." One of the younger officers murmured, "You are now." Ed crossed his arms. "Brother, you just fought off half a militia without breaking stride. You think any of these people could do that?" Another officer nodded. "We underestimated you. All of us." Marcus hated how it made his chest tighten, because the truth was, for years he'd convinced himself he didn't deserve to be seen. Didn't deserve to be valued. As long as Lily had him, that was enough. But hearing it, hearing men who once walked past him in hospital corridors without a second glance speak to him like he mattered, stirred something deep and unsteady. Agent Price cleared her throat. "Mr. Hale, with your background, your intervention tonight is going to raise questions, good ones. We've been trying to build a case against the ring Emily stumbled into. With her evidence and your eyewitness account of the attack, this could break everything open." Emily pressed the flash drive into Price's hand. "Then take it. But don't leave us in the dark." "I won't," Price said. "But you two need protection. The people on this drive won't go down quietly." Emily's voice cracked. "Are they going to come after Marcus? Or his daughter?" Price's expression hardened. Not if we move fast. Tom stepped in. I'll escort him home. Personally. Price nodded. Good. And Hale Marcus looked at her. You may not want to hear this now, she said, but the Bureau might need you. A man with your experience, your instincts, your courage, doesn't come around often. Marcus stiffened. I'm not going back to that life. Maybe not. But consider this, sometimes the only people who can fix broken things are the ones who've been broken before. Emily's eyes softened, and her voice was gentle. Marcus, they're not asking you to go to war. They're asking you to help stop people who hurt others the way they tried to hurt me. He stared at her for a long time. I can't lose Lily, he whispered. You won't, she said, because you fight like a man who's already lost everything once and refuses to lose again. Her words hit him like a shockwave. The freight yard felt quieter now, heavy, charged. Price closed the laptop. We need a formal statement by dawn, and you both need secure transport. Ed straightened. I'll go with them. Tom raised his hand. So will I. For the first time all night, Marcus felt something shift, not in the world, but inside himself. A door he'd locked years ago cracked open, not wide, but enough for light to slip through. The people who once overlooked him now waited for his answer. Emily stood beside him, trusting him without hesitation. And the world outside the freight yard was about to change for her, for him, for Lily, for everyone caught in the web of whatever was on that drive. Marcus inhaled, steady and deep. What happens next? He asked. Agent Price answered without missing a beat. Now, Mr. Hale, the real fight begins. By the time the sun broke over the river, the freight yard looked like the aftermath of a storm no one had seen coming. The men who'd hunted Emily were loaded into federal vans, wrists cuffed, faces drained of the swagger they carried hours earlier. Officers spoke in low voices, pointing at Marcus, as if still trying to piece together how a hospital maintenance man had held his ground against trained predators. Emily watched them being driven away, her shoulders sagging with relief and a little disbelief. Ed stood beside her, arms crossed, keeping her steady with his presence. Agent Price reviewed paperwork near her car, occasionally glancing at Marcus like someone recalculating everything she thought she knew. Tom waited with him. You okay? He asked. Marcus nodded, though the weight of the night tugged at his bones. I'm just thinking about Lily. She's fine, Tom said. Your neighbor stayed up with her. Kid drew you a picture and taped it to the door. I've never seen a little girl so sure her dad's coming home. Those words hit Marcus sharper than any punch he'd taken in the yard. For the first time since the chase began, he let himself breathe fully. A few minutes later, Emily approached him with her hands clasped in front of her. She looked like someone carrying both gratitude and guilt, two emotions that don't sit easily together. I don't know how to thank you, she said. If you hadn't been there tonight, they would have silenced me. Nobody would have known the truth. You're the one who found it, Marcus said. I just made sure you lived long enough to tell it. Her eyes warmed. Marcus, you saved me. And you did it while terrified for your daughter. That's not something I'll ever forget. Agent Price stepped closer. Neither will the Bureau. Your report plus the evidence Emily gathered blew open a case we've been stuck on for years. We'll be making arrests up and down the chain for weeks. It was strange he felt relief, yes, but also something like humility. He hadn't set out to expose corruption or take down a network of criminals. He was just a dad trying to get a stranger to safety. You're going to be on record, Mr. Hale, Price continued. testimony, maybe even media coverage once the dust settles. You okay with that? Marcus thought of Lily's drawings, thought of her running into his arms at pickup time, thought of the nights he sat awake afraid his past made him dangerous instead of useful. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm okay with that. Tom clapped him on the back. Saint. Louis could use more folks like you. 3 weeks later, the hospital buzzed with a different kind of energy. Nurses whispered as Marcus passed. Doctors who once brushed past him now stopped to say hello. Even the administrator, who had barely learned his name before, made a point of shaking his hand. Word gets around when a quiet man does something loud. Lily didn't fully understand what had happened, but she knew enough to be proud. She made him bring her to the hospital one evening so she could give the head nurse a picture she drew of Daddy saving the world with his big heart. The nurse cried. Emily visited a few times too. Not because she needed protection now, Price had her placed under federal witness coordination until the trials were complete, but because she said there were some people you didn't leave behind after walking through the fire together. One quiet afternoon, she found Marcus repairing a stubborn sink in a waiting room. She sat on the counter watching him work. They want me to testify in court next month, she said. I'm scared, but I'm going to do it. Marcus glanced at her. Good. You didn't survive all that just to hide again. Emily smiled. Agent Price said something else. She said you should consider taking a formal role as a civilian crisis consultant. Something part-time, flexible hours. You'd train responders how to stay calm under pressure. She paused. You'd be good at it. Marcus tightened a bolt. I left all that behind for a reason. I know, she said gently. But maybe you didn't lose it. Maybe you just saved it for the right moment. He didn't answer. But something inside him stirred the part that remembered who he'd been before. Grief hollowed him out. A part that maybe wasn't finished. Before she left, Emily rested a hand on his arm. You didn't just save me, Marcus. You helped me believe there are still good men in this world. Maybe you should let the world see you a little more. After she walked out, he sat on the floor and let her words settle deep. A year later, Marcus stood on a stage he never expected to stand, on a modest auditorium filled with first responders, community volunteers, and families. A banner hung behind him, St. Louis Crisis Readiness Initiative. 1 year strong. He wore a simple shirt and a blazer Lily insisted he buy. She sat in the front row next to Mrs. Polk, swinging her feet, eyes bright. Agent Price introduced him to the crowd as the program's lead civilian trainer, someone who had turned his experience into something that helped others stay alive. Emily stood beside her, healthy, confident. Her testimony had helped collapse an entire network of corruption, and she now served as an advisor to a non-profit that protected whistleblowers. When Marcus stepped up to the podium, applause filled the room. He cleared his throat, uncomfortable but grateful. I'm not special, he said. I just refused to run the other way. He talked about fear, about doing the right thing even when no one sees it, about the quiet strength of people who aren't in uniform, but still save lives by showing up, by standing firm, by keeping calm when the world turns violent. He ended with something he'd never dared say in public. Before, I used to think my life ended the night I lost my wife. But I was wrong. It paused. And sometimes it takes a stranger knocking on your world to start it again. The audience rose. Lily charged the stage and hugged him around the waist. He lifted her easily, her arms locked around his neck. Across the room, Emily smiled a soft, grateful smile that held the weight of everything they had survived. Tom wiped his eyes. Ed whistled. Even Price looked moved. Marcus took in the moment, the faces, the applause, the lightness in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Life hadn't gone back to what it was. It had become something better. And as he stepped off the stage with Lily's hand in his, he understood something he hadn't been ready to believe until now. Sometimes courage isn't about fighting the fire. Sometimes it's about walking out of the ashes and choosing to live again. And that, at least in his corner of Missouri, was enough to change everything.